El Chapo is the notorious drug kingpin who escaped a prison in Mexico fairly recently, and he was extradited to the United States, where he is currently awaiting a trial. He is in New York, actually. And so there's an interesting argument being made now by his appointed lawyers who argue that, hey, you know what, maybe his prison conditions are a little too harsh, and as a result, we're having a hard time, giving him a fair shot in our justice system. Okay, so let me give you the details. So Guzman is restricted to his New York City cell for 23 hours a day with the lights on at all times. He has 1 hour of exercise in a small interior cage with no access to fresh air or sunlight. His captivity appeared to be unnecessarily harsh and in contravention of minimum UN standards for the treatment of prisoners. That was a statement made by Amnesty International. Now, Amnesty International claims that they're going to do further investigations of this to kind of determine whether or not his prison conditions are fair and whether or not it gets in the way of true justice in this case. Let me give you more details about what they feel. We will continue to investigate cases of alleged improper treatment of prisoners, regardless of who the prisoner is or what they may have done. All right.
I'm curious what you all think about this, because we might be all over the board on our opinions on this.
Yeah.
All right, Ray, you start.
I'm split, because on one hand, I definitely believe in the cause of fair treatment for prisoners. On the other hand, I kind of don't give a damn about El Chapo. And I also think there may be a little bit of like, yeah, maybe his prison conditions are harsh, or maybe they're just harsh compared to the Mickey Mouse resorts that he escaped from twice in the past.
Right, yeah.
So the second part of that is what really gives me pause here. Because it doesn't matter how bad the guy is, we can't torture him and do unusual. And I think this solitary confinement is in essence torture. So Jerry Sandusky's a piece of crap and he's like the worst guy alive. There's thousands of those cases. Doesn't mean we should put them in a hole and give them solitary confinement for 23 hours a day. But El Chapo is a guy who's broken out of many prisons.
Yeah.
So he says, well, you won't let me call anyone outside. Yeah, because the last time you called someone outside, there was a mile-long tunnel underneath the prison. So he's got the worst case to make, and even so, it still sounds a bit too harsh.
Disagree. I think that this is one of the rare situations where I think that these restrictive prison conditions make sense, because he's not some random person who was involved in the drug trade. He was or is a highly connected person who has a network of individuals that are willing to do whatever it is to help him get out, right? And not necessarily get out of our prisons or escape our prisons. I would argue that it might be a little more difficult here, but nonetheless, he is a risk, and I think that they're trying to do whatever is possible to ensure that he's not wheeling and dealing while he's in prison, because that's something that happens as well. You have people inside still manipulating their drug rings and shit. So I think that's what they're concerned about.
I think it's it's always risky when you have different standards for different people, right? So someone would say, well, Edward Snowden's he's a traitor. He's a what is it?
Traitor.
Or
committing treason.
He's a traitor. He's a traitor. He's traitored. And so him or Private Manning, right? They tortured him, and it was all because, and they all had bullshit reasons why they did it. And I'm pretty sure that if you are running a prison, you should be able to keep the most visible guy in your prison secure. And if you can't, then let's have somebody else come run the prison. And I don't think we need to, I understand, I'm not being sympathetic to this guy. I'm saying what they can then do to anybody, because they say they're always just as bad as that guy. So it's a slippery slope, and that's why we have rules that you have to treat everyone equally. I think, I don't think it's okay for the state to be enforcing torture on anyone. I don't know if this rises to the level of torture, but I think we can lock up terrorists in our country, and we don't have to do that to them, do we? I mean, are they all?
I'm sure we're giving them insanely strict and harsh conditions as well. And look, there are some components of this that I'm willing to have a conversation on, right? I'm very important. Whether or not I want to have a conversation matters.
FBI's calling her right now. Hey, Anna, we heard you were willing to have a conversation.
But if I were, if I had to adjudicate the situation, then I would say, all right, we don't need to leave the lights on for 23 hours a day, right? So let the guy sleep. It's really hard to sleep with the lights on, whatever it is. But I totally understand why they want to isolate him, especially when you consider how powerful he is and how connected he is.
I think so. Funny enough, I think everybody's right, even though we're disagreeing. But let me explain. So, yeah, of course, Jimmy, we have to have the same standard for everybody. We can't say, well, I really don't like that guy. Right? That's the whole point of the sentence. You show that you really don't like that guy when you give him a life sentence, or hey, that wasn't so bad, you got a year, right? So that's how we adjudicate that. On the other hand, there are some unique situations that call for very specific measures. So El Chapo is a guy who could call the outside world and could have passwords, and they've had in the past. And he could say like, oh, I hope Joey's doing okay. And that means murder Jose in Sinaloa. Who knows, right? So you could be a little bit careful. Now, if you got a hacker, am I gonna give him access to the computer at the prison library? Probably not. So, you could make judgment calls there case by case. Or really dangerous hacker, presumably, right? But that doesn't mean that you keep him in a hole for 23 hours and you don't let him see sunlight. There has to be some bare minimum guidelines to how we treat human beings, even if they're El Chapo. And so, look, we're on the super right-wing draconian edge of that when you look at the whole world. In Norway, it's unbelievable what the prisoners get. And Breivik, the guy who murdered dozens of people, including all those kids in Norway, is complaining that he only has PlayStation 3 and they haven't updated it to PlayStation 4. I'm not kidding. And that's the worst mass murder they ever had in Norway. And so on the other hand, we go way over the top. Solitary confinement at a drop of a hat when it is almost certainly torture. And they're saying, nah, this is lawyer, and I don't know if it's true, but they're saying El Chapo is already imagining people in his room and having conversations with people that don't exist. But it is believable because that's what happens to the human mind if you can't talk to anyone else. We're social animals, and it breaks us psychologically. So we're not, Eighth Amendment, we're not supposed to do that. And as human beings, we shouldn't do that to other human beings because it's not good enough to say that they're the bad guys. We're supposed to be the good guys. Our reporter Jordan Chatton broke the Donna Brazile story. He was right, she just apologized for it. Help us get more reporters like that. You're the one responsible for that. Thank you, and let's do more right now at tytnetwork.com/go.